Written by u/Carl 1961. People think I'm a serial killer. It's far worse than that. Part 5. I forced myself to stay calm while I drove home. Then, as soon as I entered my apartment, I collapsed on my bed having a panic attack. What I had just seen couldn't have been real. It had to be another hallucination, like the girl I had seen jogging at the campus. I remembered what Dr. Steiner had told me about brain surgery patients experiencing hallucinations while they recovered, but as far as I knew, I had recovered, and hadn't experienced anything else like that until tonight. I thought at first that maybe it was the pain medication I had been taking screwing with my head, causing me to see things, but I had stopped taking the pain meds when my headaches had ceased. I wondered if I was losing my mind. If maybe I should see a psychiatrist. I drank a couple beers and slowly calmed myself down, trying to rationalize what I had seen. I had been dealing with a lot of stress at work lately, picking up a ton of extra shifts since 2 other baggers had been out with the flu, and I told myself my tired, overworked mind had just imagined seeing the businessman's face change into whatever that thing had been. I convinced myself that's all it had been, my eyes playing tricks on me. A week went by without incident. Then one late afternoon, not long before Halloween, I was bagging groceries as usual, thinking about going with a couple of the guys to see a movie after work and not really paying attention, when the customer I was bagging for, an older, upper crust, high society woman in a fashionable Donna Karan dress and a fur coat, began berating me for almost crushing her eggs beneath a bag of organic canned vegetables. I nodded apologetically, not really fazed as she continued to upbraid me harshly, a steady stream of insults and name-calling. Baggers were at the low end of the totem pole in the supermarket hierarchy and bore the brunt of the wrath when it came to rude customers, so I was used to it. Plus, I already had a thick skin from all the years of verbal, and sometimes physical, abuse I had endured from people while being homeless. I glanced up to offer her a brief, subservient smile, and felt it freeze on my face. Where a moment before there had been the face, which bore the unnaturally tight, stretched look of someone who had too many facelifts in a desperate bid to hold on to their fading good looks, of an elegant, upper-class woman wearing an expression of imperious, classist disdain, there was now only a smudge of inky blackness, solid except for 2 red, inhuman eyes that burned like coals. For a second I froze, feeling horror race through my heart. It was the first time I saw one up close, only 4 feet separated us. I stared into that dark void where a face should have been, not hearing the woman, or the thing that looked like a woman, as it, continued her harangue over the incompetence of the employees of this establishment. Those red eyes seemed to bore into my soul. I glanced quickly to the cashier, a surly, bitchy blonde teenager named Kim, but she was casually scanning the woman's coupons with a bored expression, unaware of the inhuman entity that stood on the other side of the register. The thing finally fell silent from its rant and seemed to regard me for a moment in silence, cocking its head slightly, as if realizing that I could see through its disguise, could see its real face. Quickly I snapped out of it, regaining my composure, and continued bagging her/its groceries, trying to appear as nonchalant as humanly possible. I glanced out of the corner of my eye to Kim as she finished checking out the woman's purchases and handed her the receipt. For a second they made eye contact, but Kim didn't react to the horror directly in front of her. I realized that she couldn't see its true form. All she saw was a normal, if rather cuntish woman of higher social standing who looked down on the lower classes with contempt. "Have a nice day," I told the thing with forced cheeriness as it wheeled its shopping cart out of the store, ignoring me. The moment it was out of the store, I felt myself collapsing inwardly. I felt like my head was spinning. I was quivering a little, and abruptly I realized I was going to be sick. I told Kim I had to use the restroom and I would be right back. She just rolled her eyes, uninterested. I made a beeline for the nearest men's room, burst in to find it, fortunately, empty, and ducked into a stall, vomiting into the toilet. When I was finished, I just knelt there for a while, gasping for air, trying to pull myself back together. Something was going on here, something I didn't understand. Something frightening. When I had myself more or less under control, I cleaned up at the sink, splashing water on my face, then patting it dry with paper towels. Then exited the men's room. "Are you alright?" An older cashier named Casey, who I was kind of friendly with, asked me as I returned to the front end of the supermarket. "You look kind of pale." I smiled at her calmly and told her I did feel a little sick. I must have caught what Zach and Randall had last week. She looked concerned and told me I should go home and get some rest. I told her I would do just that. Luckily for me, my shift was almost over and I had the next 2 days off. I finished my shift and as soon as I had clocked out I left the store and headed across the mostly deserted parking lot towards my car. It was early evening and already mostly dark, except for what light was cast by the parking lot light poles. I kept glancing around, leery, paranoid, half convinced that thing was going to pop out from some hiding place and attack me before I reached the car. I walked slowly, my ears tuned for the slightest sound. I felt my heart sink when I heard footsteps approaching steadily in my direction. I hurried to my car, frantically fumbling my keys out of my pocket, and dropped them. I reached for them, and a voice spoke my name directly behind me. I jumped and spun around, exhaling with relief when I saw it was just 2 other baggers I had gotten close with, Carrie and Neil, both of whom were around my age. They asked me if I was ready to go to the movie we had been planning on seeing, but I told them I wasn't feeling very well and told them to go on without me, that we'd do another movie some other time. They both seemed to understand, said goodbye and walked off. I got in my car and made sure to lock my doors before taking off. My thoughts were racing as I drove home, and I wasn't paying full attention, almost rear-ending a Honda Civic stopped in front of me at a red light, causing the driver to stick his hand out the window and flip me off. I parked outside my apartment complex and made my way to the building, still glancing around nervously. I didn't feel safe until I was in my apartment with the door shut and locked behind me. I sat at the table in front of the second-hand TV I had bought. There was a horror movie on one of the channels. An Egyptian mummy was stalking the residents of an upscale Manhattan high-rise. I stared blankly at the screen, not seeing the movie. I was lost in deep thought, trying to make sense of it all. There were beings out there that looked and acted and sounded human, things that apparently only I could see in their true form. I had encountered 2 so far, or maybe 3 including the jogging girl at the medical school campus. I didn't know what they were, where they had come from, or, most importantly, what they were doing here. Part of me still wanted to rationalize what was going on. Maybe they were hallucinations, or maybe I really was going crazy. But the rest of me didn't buy it. If everyone I encountered looked like one of those things, maybe I could have believed I was nuts, but so far it had only happened to a select few. I thought about calling someone, the police, my doctors, but what could they do? No one else could see what those things really looked like. The doctors would think I was seeing things and the cops would think I was a lunatic, or some asshole pulling a half-assed prank. They'd probably figure I was drunk or on drugs. I realized, with cold dismay, I was on my own. I didn't know what was going on, but I was determined to find out. I decided that the next time I saw one of those creatures, I was going to follow it, and get to the bottom of this. This proved to be a terrible mistake.